Welcome to the Reef Keeping Secrets Podcast, hosted by Shane Backer at SBB Corals. Listen and learn as we dive deep into the reef keeping industry, interviewing top reef keepers from around the world, from business to hobby. Join us on our journey.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, good evening, man. How are you?
I'm doing awesome, man. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Man, thank you for having me, man. It's an honor.
Oh, man, what you got going on over there?
Oh, man, a little bit of everything, man. Your live stream will be where I kind of break the ice on a lot of new things that I've done to the tank over the last few months. Part of the reason why I've kind of been a little quiet in the background was, we ended up going to a new house and a lot of new changes, which I think a lot of reefers will relate to, because it's, it happens to a lot of reefers, moving and new things. So, that was something that I never really expected as I was doing this build from the jump. I built this tank from scratch 6 years ago. A lot of the design was built around the old house, and sometimes we don't really think that far ahead. Luckily, I had the build for 6 years. So this tank is a 6-year-old tank, but it's now kind of a brand new tank in a sense. It still has a lot of the old juices flowing, but I did a lot of remodel along the way. I think I did a lot of cool stuff in the old house, so I set myself a pretty high standard. So it was like, what's next, So I just figured it would be a cool opportunity for me to kind of revamp, rethink, and I like being creative. I come from a background where my dad was a jack of all trades, carpenter, came from Cuba, and built his small handyman business. And when you're in that position, you become a little bit of an electrician, a little bit of a plumber, a little bit of a carpenter. And for this hobby, I mean, that's a perfect mix, because this has it all. It has a little bit of all. So I was fortunate enough to kind of take on a lot of the nuggets and knowledge from my father, and I applied it to the hobby, But yeah, I'm excited to join you. I'm excited to show it off. It's still a work in progress. There's still a lot of under construction in there. But I'm pretty happy where I am, and I think I'm in a pretty good place to.
Can you still hear me? I think I lost you for a second.
Where I'm going with it,
Hey, you're back. All right, so guys, just so everyone who's joining us right now, today we have our special guest, Luis, from Reef Corals, and for everyone who doesn't know, actually, Luis invited me on to his podcast, and that kind of got me motivated to kind of get these calls going, and to talk to other hobbyists. So I just want to give you, a huge thank you, Luis, for bringing me onto your show and, really inspiring me for doing this. So I wanted to invite you onto our show. I know I did a lot of background research. I know your last tank, it had like a waterfall feature. And I see that you have an amazing tank in the background, and I would just love, for you to kind of, show us your tank, show us your methods. I don't know how you want to start. I see you have everything set up. You did say you had some special announcements of kind of some things you were working on. So maybe you want to kind of let us in a little bit on what you got going on back there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I guess before I show it, I'll kind of give a little bit of a snippet of kind of where I went with it and a little bit of my methods, and that'll kind of give a better understanding of how the tank came to be what it is today. A disclaimer from the jump: my creativity sometimes takes me to extremes. So a lot of my methods and ideas, although very relatable in a lot of ways to a lot of people, I have always been curious about, how far I can take certain things and where I can go. And a lot of that background, it's not just me being crazy. I love research. I love going far back. I mean, I'm talking about from millions of years ago down, because these corals aren't new to the hobby. They're new to us. but they've been around for a very long time. So I'm always trying to see the bigger picture and how can I apply it to our everyday hobby. And I went from a hobbyist to a small business. So when that transition happened, and I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of cool things, but I'm not made of possible aquarium. A lot of these things just ended up trickling down to the customer in a sense that by me making stronger corals and hardier corals, I have better end results. The customers have better end results. And it all kind of fell in place, which drove me to go into deeper research. So, I've always thought about stability. I think it's such a good thing for the hobbyist, and it's very important for the everyday hobbyist to definitely try to keep some type of stability in their tank. But for me as a business, I've always felt like my corals are going to be dispersed into 1,000 different scenarios. And I can't predict which one's going to come which day. I might get a nutrient poor tank one day, a nutrient rich tank one day. So how can I make one size fit all? And my approach was always to be able to cause a nice variation throughout time strategically, and getting as close as I can to some extremes without causing too much ruckus. With that being said, it's a longer game. It's a longer game because you kind of have to go through the motions, just like the ocean. When it has its problems, it takes some time for it to readjust, but ultimately you see the comeback. But it always drove my curiosity to see how many changes and what I can do to be able to drive these extremes. So a lot of my methods and a lot of my ideologies, and like, look, I want to give you also your flowers, for the sake of being a business. Nowadays there's a lot of businesses that won't go out and share information or keep it very secret or don't. And the other day you did one about being able to make a little extra money. A lot of people won't kind of bring that up because they're in fear of what it can cost to their business. And I think that I've always tried to take that approach. So to see you do it in the scale you are, I mean, that takes a lot. And I say all of this to kind of encourage people to kind of help each other out, build each other up. A lot of the information I share, like I said, it's not something I would kind of suggest unless you are truly knowledgeable of what you're doing and understand what's happening in your tank. But I like to share it because it opens up ideas and thoughts, and I think that's important in the hobby to kind of leave people with a sense of thought to be able to go out and seek information and seek knowledge. And I mean, I got to where I am today by live streams like this, forums, conversations, and there's not a one size fits all. So I mean, I'm sure you've talked to so many people and you've got so many different thoughts, and you find your agreements and disagreements respectfully. But the reason why I was leading to that was because I'm gonna piggyback off of 2C Reef last week. And there was a lot of things that he was doing. For example, he doesn't do it by design. He does it because of his circumstances. But like the water change in the winter and not in the summer. Although he's doing it for circumstance, there is changes whether he sees it or not, and some might not always be aesthetic.
He's on this call right now too, by the way.
Oh,
He's commenting on the.
Kudos to him. He touched on so many points that I hope me and you can touch on. But he was spot on. And I mean, look, what that caused was not only for me to kind of seek new knowledge and seek different circumstances, but it reinforces certain mindsets, especially me with my crazy ideology. When I hear things that make sense, that fall into me, I can totally appreciate that. Okay, I'm not just crazy. Like, these things do make sense. So that was an interesting take. And for me, for example, my nitrates, phosphates, a lot of people will ask me, the usual question of where you keep them and stuff. The way I drive my nitrates and phosphates is interesting. So I use an old school method. I use carbon and GFO, but the way I do it is I can understand just by so much time and process when I'm going to go down and when I'm going to go up based on when the media is being changed. It is pretty obvious that when you replace the medias, you're going to have a nice drop. But I think for me, the important part is always finding that even ground. Whether I'm going down or I'm going up, I'm always going together. So a way for me to cause a little bit of variable on the nutrient side is just keeping my carbon and GFO constantly dissipating evenly, so I know my nitrates and phosphates will be down when it's changed, and then I let it slowly work themselves up. And then when I feel time, I get them to where I feel I'm in an interesting place, and then I drop them right back by just changing out the media. And then I cause a lot of variables in all areas. So temperature, waves, lighting. I mean, every variable that I can cause some type of change within reason, I'm constantly swaying it. And my corals are doing it. And, the results are always varying. Some corals will react quicker. Some don't care. Some might take a hit and then come back, sometimes better than ever, sometimes equal. There's so much variation, but we are playing with a lot of different species. We're playing with a lot of, especially if you're a mixed reef, and which a lot of people see nowadays. That's a pretty common ground because there's so much beautiful selection. It's hard to just commit to one thing. When, like you, for example, you drop some beautiful mushrooms today. Like, you can be an SPS lover, but you see some of those mushrooms, there's no way you can just shy away from that. You got to have them in your tank. But yeah, if you let me, I'll probably have some long-winded answers, so I'll kind of pause in case you want to touch on anything or have any questions for me on the meantime, or I can just keep going.
Yeah, no, I love the energy. I never know where this is going to go. The one thing I do want to mention to everyone on the call right now is we'll probably end up going around 90 minutes. We typically talk for an hour and 15 minutes. And then after that, we'll pretty much open it up for questions. So if you do ask questions right now, they're going to honestly get buried. So, wait to ask your questions till the end. We do try to answer every single question. The other thing is that at the end of this call, we're going to give away a $150 SBB gift card. And then the way we're going to give that out is we're going to ask a question, just a random question throughout. So if, obviously you want to stay till the end and keep listening to win that gift card. So again, thanks everyone for joining. So yeah, Louis, keep going, man. One person, just to kick it off, one person asked a question that was kind of funny. They said, is that plant in the background the plant from the Little Shop of Horrors?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'll definitely get to the tank soon, and you guys see it up close. But
yeah. And they want to see the tank too, man. They've been saying, let's see the tank. So
yeah, it's gonna come right now, for sure. So one thing it'll probably be long-winded is a little background on me, and a reason why I always talk about variation in the tank is I come from the plant world. So before I was in the coral hobby, before I got into the coral hobby, I was in the plant business. I worked with retail garden centers, and I was dealing with a lot of live goods. So there's a lot of correlation in there, and I've done a lot of research to see how much on the science side has been as far as comparison from plants to corals, because I found so many similarities and on approach, on the actual genetics and everything. So I was blessed to be able to deal with some of the best growers in the world as far as the plants is concerned, and their approaches and how they do things with the plants. And I figured, wow, how can I take so much of this great knowledge and apply it to our world, which it doesn't seem like it's happening, because I think there's a lot of people that are really, really good with plants, and there's a lot of people that are really, really good with corals. So, I think I'm in a very unique space where I've kind of met both worlds, and I can kind of apply a lot of similarities. So as you can see, that plant is a live plant. And I did some homework before that, and I don't think anybody's put live orchids in the middle of their reef aquarium or air plants in the middle of their reef aquarium. So this is something new to the hobby, period. So that's one of the cool releases I have. I've always had air plants on top, and it's nothing.
Wait, is that a freshwater orchid?
That's a regular outdoor Phalaenophysis orchid. That
Really?
is
Growing in salt water?
yeah. It's slightly above the water line,
Wow.
but it is taking a lot of the you know this you can't help the salinity in the air, so it's definitely adjusted. But like I mean that goes to show the similarity in the corals. Corals can also adjust to a lot of things. The plants can also do the same thing. So there's one similarity right there. Um, so with that being said, that in the plant world, for example, one thing people don't realize is there is no such thing in nature as house plants. House plants is something that's acclimated from outdoor plants. Obviously, maybe some growing under trees or some growing under so at a shaded area, so it makes it a lot easier to make that acclimation happen to an indoor setting. But a lot of these plants, especially new releases and new species, they go through an R&D process where they're putting, and they're aware that when they're putting a retail garden space, they're going to thousands of different homes. You know, and every home, you know, what your mom does with it or your wife is not the same thing mine. She might put it in the kitchen by a light. The other one might put it in the dark. So it's up to these growers to really dissect, like put them in extreme conditions to be able to assure that it has the best possible chance when it makes it to any scenario. So now with that, you can kind of see why that my ideology took the route it did for corals. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and just to save everybody the questions, I'll go ahead and show the tank a little bit and give you guys a preview of kind of even the stand and what I've done with it. So let me flip this camera around.
Awesome.
And,
Yeah, I'm so happy that you're right there and we can actually visit the tank with you live right now.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start from afar, give you guys a better feel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's already in Christmas spirits, as you can see.
Oh, I love it. I saw the tree over there too. You got the elf right on top of the lace.
Yeah, so me and my son spent days. This was actually brand new Lowe's wood, and every break, every mark, everything is torch and hammer.
Oh, wow.
And then finished with a stain. I think something unique about this stand and the top is it has a lot of live plants built into it, mosses all around the tank.
Oh, wow. So that moss is all live moss, right?
Live moss, live plants, everything is alive, and thriving, by the way. Yeah, so there's a lot of, I think it's a very unique stand. I'm very happy with it. From the top, you can kind of see the view, and I'll give you guys a feel of what the orchid looks like and how that's doing. You're getting some blooms out of the air plants.
Oh,
beautiful,
wow.
Nice orchid. A lot of the air plants are thriving. And not only are the air plants thriving, but they're actually in the water as well. So it's not like they're completely exposed out of the water, but even this is a slight experiment as I'm kind of seeing what the tank reacts to as these things naturally take their course. Okay. So as you can see, this is, and I wish I can zoom out a little bit to give you guys a better idea of kind of where we're going with it.
Bro, that's crazy. How long has that plant been there? Like, obviously we're all going to see the progression of how that root starts forming in the water, essentially.
So it took about 2 weeks to get this tank finalized. This from the time I moved. This tank's been here for about 4 months now. So it took me about 2 weeks to finish off the carpentry, and the plants came in around the same time. So these plants are roughly about 4 months in now into the build. So another cool feature that everybody, one thing that kind of made this tank pretty popular in the old house was the rain feature. So Alexa, turn the rain on.
Okay.
No,
you should
way.
And there you go. You have the rain on demand. It usually works automatically through my ATO, just like anybody's ATO system. I'm just steering the water a different way, and it's currently going on thunderstorm mode automatically.
That's sick. So wait, that's your ATO right now feeding the tank?
Yeah, that's my RO water, and that not only is it like, so in the past, a lot of people since I had an enclosed canopy, a lot of people assumed the water was coming from on top.
Bro,
Like,
that's sick.
Yeah, so, and it's on thunderstorm, so it's a full-blown thunderstorm, rain, and the waves speed up automatically, so it gives a full thunderstorm, just like in the ocean. You get an intense, and the corals, the fish, everybody's used to it already. It's been years this has been going on.
Wait, so hold on a second. So wait, that RODI, the RO that goes in there, right? So it auto tops off the tank. So like randomly throughout the day, does the water come down, or do you have to basically force it to come down when you want it to show,
so this
basically?
is where the water's coming in through. This water's running through the wall and makes its way outside to my RO tank where I make the RO water. Right behind that kitchen is the outside of the house, so the tanks are right behind it. So the water's coming in from out there.
Yeah.
It works like a normal ATO. You know, when the tank is low, it'll just kick off and refill and shut off when it's done. Yeah.
So it'll drip like that. So the rain feature actually is a feature that is working 24/7, whether you're there or not, technically.
It's active when I need it. Right now I'm doing it manually
Yeah.
for the sake of
Yeah.
show. But
Yeah.
it works on its own. It tops off when it needs to top off.
Dude, can you show us like the inner workings of like where the water's dripping from? Like it's hard to see kind of how. I mean, people are going to be like, this is such a thing that I don't think anyone has ever seen before in this hobby.
There's the way I did it was I went to Home Depot at the time, and I used drip irrigation from landscaping, gardening, obviously, and it comes in huge rolls. So I just created these holders, and then I just these holders allow me to position it exactly where I want it, so the drops fall exactly where I want it. Especially since I have the middle piece and everything going on, it has to be very strategic and to avoid spill off too. You want it to be right inside where it doesn't make its way outside of the tank. So
does that actually also water the orchid at the same time?
No, but I really didn't even think of that. That's a really good idea. So I'm gonna.
That's sick.
I mean, it wouldn't be too hard to add that feature because I already have the water running in. Let me see if I can get the lights back and a little wider so you can see a little bit better. The water's coming in from the wall. From outside, it works its way into the beginning of this drip irrigation. I have a valve here. If I need to shut it off, I can manually. And then it just works its way around and around and around, and it creates a very natural and subtle drip. The valve also helps me control the speed that I want it to come out at. So that's my rain feature. And it's voice activated as well, so I can, Alexa, turn the rain off.
Oh, that is unbelievable, man. I just love, like, I didn't know what to expect when you said you had something to unleash to everyone, and that is absolutely something to unleash.
So, and as you can see, like, it's very clean on top, so there's not a lot of wiring or tubing to really kind of make it happen. So it's somewhat simple as far as, you know, to avoid a lot of extra. And although this is kind of cumbersome, I think I did a pretty good job of somewhat keeping it neat in a sense, you know?
Yeah.
And keeping it, you know, there's also the consideration of keeping it away from electronics, you know, the lights, and, you know, these are radions.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want those getting wet.
Well,
so there was
when you're like from the back, like you can't see the inner working. So I think you did a really good job, you know, in terms of like hiding all that work. Yeah. That's why I was saying, like, can we zoom in on that? Because from like the back view, like it literally just looks like it's raining down. And I'm like, well, how are you keeping that away from the lights? You know, how are you not getting like an electrical fire? And now I can see it.
So these are, I want to say these are, I cut these out of like some type of window border or something. So it's hard to see it, but inside it has like this plastic, like a plastic foam. So it kind of holds it neatly without too much pressure in place. And it allows me to have like this precision where I can like guide exactly where I want it. So you can really control exactly where it's going. It's not going anywhere because it's secure. So it's completely segregated from the lighting system, although close, far enough, you know, so it's very safe. I've had this system for about a few years now, and it's yet to, you know, I've had zero bad experiences. So, you know, it's proven to work, so for sure.
that's the original tank that you had with the other water feature as well?
Yep.
Like the original one in your other house?
Correct. So I just revamped it. Even like the canopy, I removed the oh shit, I'm sorry. I removed the face. So it used to be an enclosure. So I decided to open it up, because I wanted to put some plants on top, and I used to have a motor that would bring it down, and I felt it was unnecessary because I really never used it. So I figured if I can remove that, and I think it's cooler because, since the rain feature is there, the fact that it's completely clear kind of adds a little mystery to the rain. Like, where's it coming from? Yeah. How does it work? Yeah, and I was able to also, so before when you used to walk up to the tank, there was a lot more visibility of this stuff. So I feel like with this new design, it hides more, so Alexa, I'm sorry I have to scream, but
no, that's cool.
I'm a little
cool, man. I have one question. What's that like root plant hanging down right there to the right side?
Yep, yeah, that's a different some type of Potacapris. It's a live.
Ooh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a live plant. And I'm going to be using this for part of the conversation today as far as the way growth on this is and how relatable it is to like, for example, an acropora. So between each nod, just the height of the nod will kind of tell you it varies based on the lighting schedule and temperature. So, longer days, you'll have shorter nods, less light, your nods will stretch a little more. So if you look close enough, you can kind of see a story, of how the changes have happened. And, you see that on like certain type of corals, and so we don't really kind of consider it that way, but, night and day, things are happening with these corals, like they have different behaviors in the day and the night. The day they're photosynthesizing, at night they're building their carbonate structures, and the plants have a lot of similarity in that sense. So, but yeah, I definitely try to incorporate a lot of the plant theme. And I think it's a really different. I thought it was just really different. The fact that the moss and the plants would be a cool approach to.
And what's that little screen? Sorry, not to cut you. There's a little screen right there. Does that control the whole tank? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty basic though. I mean, just the basics: the lighting, the flow. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was pointing at it. Yeah. Just. So
is that like an iPad?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It's an iPad. It has a little moss growing out of it. But yeah, it handles most of the system. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at so far with the tank. Let me see if I can give you guys another little close-up of the live plants. I thought this was a pretty unique thing. And it just makes for interesting. I think I'm giving people the proof and the comfortability to maybe try this one day. I think it's beautiful. My wife is a fan of orchids, so if you're trying to win your wife over, I mean, this is one way to do it. But
dude, that's amazing. And what's underneath? Like, how is that suspended in midair? Like, what's underneath that? Is that part of a rock structure? Like, how is that?
Yes.
How did you create that technique, basically?
Yeah. So
wait, is that an can too, right on there?
Yeah, there's all types of stuff all over it right now, and I mean, and it's like I said, it's still on trial, so I'm slowly bringing stuff in as I find comfort in the way everything's playing out. Because, like I said, I literally have plants growing inside the tank, so you kind of got to be a little bit cautious, and what you're putting in and making sure everything's running. Which so far no issues, but it's better safe than sorry. Another thing that I did, my tank used to be 100% bare bottom, and now I'm 50% sand, 50% bare bottom. So it's a unique kind of look that I'm going for. And I think that's another kind of cool feature where I get best of both worlds. Some people like, why'd you go bare bottom? I mean, I wanted to try bare bottom, had sand my whole life, but I'd be lying if I said I missed the sand. So I just said, well, I'll do both. So yeah.
So wait, so the plant itself is on like rock work, right? It's solid underneath.
It's literally a buildup, a natural buildup. I had no extra. My goal when I was doing the aquascape is just let the rock work build itself up high enough where I can build the garden. Yep.
Ah, okay.
So,
okay.
But it is.
How's it been? Like, so I mean, so the tank's been running now for 4 months. and I see that the orchid now is pretty much shooting roots into the water. Do you think that it's obviously, sucking salt water up? I mean, the root is directly in the water. So do you see that root now, is it extending into the water, or does it kind of not like the water, or are you still kind of not sure?
Well, just like the plants, you have just like the corals. Initially, you will see a little bit of them trying to figure it out. Like you can see, it's definitely an initial shock for them. But as the days progress, you slowly see how, like, it starts handling because salt will build up on these things. Like literally, if you look
Mm,
hard enough, you can literally see the salt creep on these
yeah.
things, and they'll adapt just fine. They eventually they're just completely immune to it, and it's normal to them at a certain point. Which I think at this point they're there, because the salt creep is pretty strong. They're peaked out on salt creep. I mean, I don't think you can get any saltier than this, and they're holding up just fine. So it seems like they've kind of passed the acclimation point at this point, and they're
And how
holding up.
long has that orchid actually been in that position? Let's say, like in the tank,
Two
on the, like right
from
there.
from 2 weeks in. So it's
Oh, so
going
it's
on
been there now
3.
over 3 months.
Yes, the whole thing. It's been 3 months now.
So
Hmm.
it's actually, or yeah, I mean, with the salt creep, I mean, I know with our tanks, like the salt creep's out of
Yeah,
control. So
you
I mean,
can't help
like, do you
it.
clean? No, do you clean it, the salt creep off, or you just leave it on natural now and it's all
I
good?
I do not touch it. The only thing I do, and let me introduce you to my buddy right here. I know a lot of
Oh,
people. He was featured on BRS, and he's a pretty popular guy. But that's my buddy Rocky right there.
yeah, yeah.
Let me see if I can show you guys kind of how I do it. All right, so you guys can see, this is pretty much RO water, and
Hmm.
once in a blue moon, I'll come in and I'll give it a little spray, just give it a little bit of a drink, clean it
Okay.
off. I mean, it won't necessarily remove the salt creep, but it'll kind of loosen it up a little bit. I'll give it a little bit of a drink. Nothing too crazy. Once again, this is RO water. It's nice and clean, so it's safe for the tank. And then while I'm at it, I kind of go into these plants and I start kind of giving them a drink.
Mm.
And I'll go in
So
and give
that
everybody.
that RO water, that's been through your RODI, like you make that's not like tap water. That's legit like RO
Yeah,
water that
yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody
Yep.
actually asked earlier, "What's in your fridge?" Can you show what's in your fridge? I mean, you're right there next to your fridge, so I figured I would just bring that question out.
In the sense of like reef stuff, or like what I'm eating,
I don't
like what is
know. They just said, "What's in your fridge?" And you just opened the fridge, so I said, "Why not go back to that?"
well, I'll give you guys the reef stuff. I'll be honest with you. Pretty much all I'm using for the reef, I'm big on Microbacter 7, and right now I want to say I'm out of Red Sea A and B plus. But I do a little bit of that for the feeding. And going back to kind of the variables of things, I alternate how and when I use it. So I'll go through kind of like I do a very similar to Tusi, where I kind of go up and down as far as the time. So I'll spend a period of time where I'll do it daily. Then I'll draw back to about every other day. Sometimes I'll go as far as a week, and then get myself back to a week, and just kind of always looking at what happens, what changes, what doesn't change, or whatnot.
And did you have a sump on that tank? I don't think you showed us that.
Oh,
The
I'm
sump?
sorry.
Yeah, show
Yeah,
us that. Yeah, yeah, I didn't know what the filtration system was like on
let
that.
me flip that for you.
Yep.
So it's a little messy right now, but it's under construction. Nothing too crazy. Pretty much stage one.
Okay.
Just returned. Have a few clowns, I believe, down there. Protein skimmer doing its job. Like I told you guys, carbon and GFO. I replace it. Tank goes down. Let it kind of work out. And right now, it's actually towards the tail end of its course. So it's time to change it. So this tank's actually like right now at its highest nitrates and phosphate levels. So
And
media is
what are
definitely.
those levels right now? Yeah, what do you keep those at? I mean, I know you know.
Well, right now it's probably pushing a good 30 to 40 ppms, and maybe probably about 0.03, 0.04 on phosphate. So it's fairly high, and it'll work its way down once I change the medium to about 0.1 and 0.5. I mean, yeah, 0.1 and about 15 to 20 on the nitrates. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that looks amazing. And how are the corals in there doing? I mean, I just, since you're so close to the tank, I would love to see what you got in there and kind of what some of your favorite corals are and everything.
Oh yeah, I mean, since it's about 3 to 4 months in, a lot of and with my crazy methods and the move, I really put them through a lot of stress points throughout this time. So there's a lot of things that are kind of making their way to full completion, and there's a lot of things still kind of at the works of making its rounds. But let me show you exactly kind of I'll give you guys some examples. And kind of show you like some finished product and some things that are still going through its cycle, of my madness or whatnot.
Yeah.
So, as you can see, some got beautiful Ghanies. I'm a big Zoa fan, so I have a lot of different cool Zoas. I love Zoas. It's one of my favorites. A lot of digitata for sure. As you can see, some of them are really holding up nice and giving decent polyp extension. Still a lot of opportunity, but like I said, it's on that course. Here's some just unique little weird combos that I have going on. Just to give you guys an idea of some of the Acropora, the way it's holding up and making its course, pretty, like I said, I'm very cautious as to what I'm putting in right now until I feel like it's completely comfortable. Some Weeping Willow seems to be doing just fine. See some chalices, leptos. Like this one, for example, this is like a big test for me. So this one's right now recoloring and rebuilding itself. So this one's like at 50% marker. But these are the type of things that I enjoy, like watching it, like rebloom its colors and come back from a cause. And like in a few months, you come back to this and it's gonna be a crazy piece. But it's a time game. It's a time game. So like I said, there's a lot of things doing really, really good. There's some things that are still kind of finding its route. A little bit of everything. Like it seems like a lot of my digis are really holding up nicely. Fireworks, pretty interesting. Nothing. Yeah, some kinks.
And you go to frag swaps a lot too, right? I think I saw a couple of your Instagram pics. It showed you at like frag swap. So do you frag directly out of that tank as well?
Yeah. Man, I grow, I buy, I sell, I trade. I do a little bit of everything. Man. And I think that's pretty common for most of us, and a lot of people don't realize, even as a seller, you're constantly hunting for new species. You're constantly hunting for new varieties or better lineages sometimes, some things you might have, but you want a better one or you've come across a better one. So yeah, I do a little bit of everything, Absolutely.
And what's your favorite type of coral between like zoes and mushrooms? I mean, and Ghanies, like what would you say like is your absolute, like just the one you love the most?
I'm pretty loyal to my beginnings, man. So zoanthids, because it's where I started. I was a zoa head for many years. Like I said, I've been in the hobby for about 15 years, and out of those 15, it's safe to say like the first 6 or 7, I was like almost only zoas. I mean, and then I started venturing in hard into like other species, and I slowly worked my way up, which I think is something I recommend people. Work your way up and go through the species and the beginner, intermediate, and then make your way up to the advanced level. And I mean, I didn't do it by design, it was by coincidence, but I'm very grateful I did, because I think it kind of set me in the right track. But yeah, that's definitely the zoanthids is my go-to for sure.
Yeah, when we first got into the hobby, we were like, like just addicted to zoos and collecting every zoos. I mean, a lot of people originally know us for zoos, and then we kind of gradually got into SPS, and then now like the SPS people are like, oh, SBB's into zoos, and we're like, yeah, those were like our roots. But unfortunately, we lost like our whole entire zoo collection. I think it was because of the TMP salt, the original salt, the one that was coming out of Turkey, and for whatever reason now we're trying to build back our zoo collection, and we're having trouble growing zoos still. I don't know why, but yeah, now that we've like done now that we're into the SPS, we're trying to see. Look, even someone says bring the zoos back. Let's go. We're trying. We collect them, and some of them die, and we can't figure it out. But yeah, we're not going to stop. I mean, we're definitely going to try to bring the zoos back for
Yeah, and
sure.
what people don't realize too is like even in the zoanthid category, like it's not necessarily that all zoanthids are easy. And some of the, once you become an enthusiast, you want some of the more crazier stuff. And coincidentally, those are the hardest ones. You wish that they all grew like nuclear pallies and they just took over your tank, but it seems like the ones you want to do that are the ones that don't want to do that.
Yeah,
But
yeah, it's funny. I see someone in the chat is Ralph. Ralph, someone that helps me with the like pretty much everything on a day to day, and he's got a system like pretty much right across the street from us. And like every time I get in zoos, I'm like, Ralph, they're dying. I just give them all to Ralph. So I just like push them all onto Ralph, and he's starting to grow them really well. So I do have hope that SBB will have some zoos back soon via Ralph growing them across the street. But yeah, we're trying to get back into zoos, man. Awesome. So yeah, you love the zoos. Yeah, that's awesome, man. And obviously, how many like I mean, I see like one thing that we always try to push, not push, but like that we advise people is, if you're a hobbyist, to try to sell coral so that way you can replenish, the hobby. I mean, the hobby's so expensive, and I see like obviously you have the tank in your house and you go to frag swap, so you've successfully done that, right? I mean, is it pretty much like paying for itself at this point?
100%. And I actually, so that's kind of how the little small business came about. It wasn't like a full one day to another. It went from hobbyist to business. It was like a slow transition where it was just enough to cover the expenses early on, like, which is exactly what you were recommending. I mean, and you gave the option. You could either take that route or go deeper, depending on how deep you want to go. But even if you don't want to become a coral salesperson, like you don't need to be a coral salesperson. If you just make enough to cover the bases and, the materials and the food and some of the live goods, whether it's fish or corals, if, and to your point, and I know some of them, especially if you're trying to buy from good sources. And, I try to be as balanced as possible as far as like price points, but at the same time, you've heard what I go through and what I do, and I really take a lot of pride and passion, and I feel like, it's fair to be able to set my price to what I feel is right for the work and the effort and the risk that we put into it, and not
Yeah.
one coral is alike, not and I think that's a beautiful part of the hobby, because you get to take some of these pieces and grow them and then frag them and be able to, make a few bucks to cover whatever it is you want to cover, even whether it's reef related or not. It's I think it's a beautiful thing, and it's a great advice. So I was really happy to see you share that, man. That was cool. That was
Yeah.
definitely cool.
So are you selling corals online or mostly at frag swaps? I mean, I'm just wondering, people on this call, a lot of, my followers, they might want to know, like, how do they find you? How do they buy corals from you? Just a little plug, like, how can they or somebody, buy corals from you? Do you have a website? Is it mostly at shows? How do people find you that way?
Yeah, well, the way I do it for the most part is most of my sales are local. So it's basically a client base that I've already built, and I kind of built a really popular chat room here in Miami where I've kind of been able to compile all my customers in. So with a combination of that and Instagram, as things come ready, because I kind of just gate, like I said, once I feel like I've made it through the process and this piece is looking, where I feel it fits the script, I snap a picture and I send it to the world and give everybody a chance to to get their hands on it, you know. But that's kind of the route I've taken. You know, once again, for me, it's a small business. So, you know, I'm not producing mass volume. I'm kind of at a point where it's more quality than quantity. For the last 2 years, which is where you kind of saw some of the frag swaps and some of the frag shows, I dove a little deeper into the selling and stuff like that. But over the last few weeks, I went back into the plant industry. So
okay.
Yeah, and I'm super excited about it, and that's kind of why there's a lot of plant juices flowing right now for me, because it's nice to kind of be back in that world a little bit. So I'm trying to find the perfect balance to both, because I'm not stopping Refex. I will continue to treat it. I just will go kind of back to my old roots. You know, at the time too, I was also venturing into tank transfers and services and stuff like that, because I thought it was a fun thing to do, and it worked. But I'm shying away from that and just focusing again on just growing corals, finding corals, building and keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think like corals and plants and I know reptiles. I mean, I see a lot of hobbyists. They kind of, you know, are in multiple hobbies. So I think a lot of hobbyists are into the plant hobby as well. I mean, I wasn't at Aquacella, but that's also a big plant show, right? I think
Yeah.
reptiles, plants, and corals. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So I think it's a good.
yeah. And you know what? Like, I'll give another interesting take, I guess. You know, and you guys, when you and Tusi were on, one thing that I loved about that convo, where you guys dug into the way you source your stuff and what can come with these corals as far as pest and disease, and, you know, his approach, which is kind of cutting off the stone. And I mean, you brought up, you know, dip, which I can't agree with more. And, you know, the one analogy that I think is very interesting for people to take, that really it goes with the plant world too, is when you
it does. Okay.
yeah, when you go to the retail garden space, and you buy an outdoor plant, you have two options with that plant. You can either plant it out in the ground, and at that point, it is in nature's hands for the most part, where a lot of the nutrients and a lot of the diseases and pests, you're putting that plant a lot more vulnerable to that, because you're exposing it to pure nature. Now, this plant, for example, this plant here is in a container. What does that mean? You have full accountability now as to what's going in and what's going out. You know, you have a lot more control as to what happens, which is a pro and a con, you know, because like nature can help you feed it, can help you water it, but it also puts you a little bit more at risk for pest and disease. Mm-hmm. In a container, you have a little bit more control versus the ground. Now, what's the similarity is we're trying to replicate an ecosystem. What's the difference? That coral is in the ocean, and it's nature, and it's also prone to disease and pests, but there's a lot of natural remedies and counterparts to kind of correct certain things. In our case, we're putting them in a container. So the bonus, the good thing about a container is you have, like I said, you have full control as to what can come in and what can come out. But that's on you to make the right decisions of putting in the right things and keeping the bad stuff out, you know? So do you see that similarity?
Yeah, no, I definitely do, and a lot of people in the chat too are even chiming in. I think one person said that his grandfather owned a plant. I'm not sure if it was a store, but he mentioned they had like 6 locations. So I think there's a lot of similarities between plants and having, like, whether it's a freshwater tank or a saltwater tank. I think there's huge similarities there. And I love the fact that you're basically marrying those in your tank right now, trying, you know, different things. And like you said, you don't know, like, the root going into the salt waters that can affect the growth of the coral. Like, have you seen any of the coral affected negatively by the plants that are growing in there?
I haven't seen any ill effects, but I think it's pretty safe to say, even though we're 3, 4 months in, it's probably still a little early to tell if there's going to be any long-term consequences or short-term consequences. But if I'm guessing, the only thing that I think will cause an effect is it's creating nutrients. It's bringing in nutrients as in the tank as it slowly deteriorates throughout time, and just being able to kind of catch them and manage them and make sure that doesn't go out of whack. And if I see it start wilting, I prune like you would a garden, and I just kind of start trimming here and there when I see I feel fit.
And does like the fish eat the roots or anything? Like, do you ever see any of that stuff going on?
Nah, they'll graze if there's like any algae on it or something like that, but for the most part they're just hunting for algae and trying to keep that's what's really keeping my tank clean for the most part. All my fish graze, so full time.
Yeah, your tank
So that
looks super clean too. When I was looking at it just now, I didn't really see any
yeah,
algae in there at all.
I'll pretty much, I don't do anything special as far as maintenance, with the exception of cleaning the glass off it here and then. Obviously for the sake of the show, I just ran the blade through the glass like anybody else would. Just another day. But yeah. And I'll give you guys, I guess, another plant similarity. When you hit the retail garden centers, you're also shopping for plants for different conditions. So you shop, even if you're doing an outdoor garden, you shopping shade, part sun, or full sun. And these corals have the same conditions. Not everybody likes a lot of light. Not everybody needs to be in the shade. So there's constant different conditions, and that's an analogy that I use for a lot of the customers that are kind of coming into the hobby, to give them the understanding that if you want the optimal results, you gotta be able to have the base knowledge of what that coral requires. Does it like a lot of flow, a lot of light, a little light? And one thing is knowing it, but one thing is applying it when you get to the house, like looking for that spot that's really going to fit the script just right.
Yep. So I think we'll open it up to some questions. I know a lot of people were posting questions, so I'm just going to basically start opening it up for questions. And the first question, so guys, if you did ask a question during the last hour or so, please retype your question. I'm going to go back and just start with one question that just popped up, and then we'll pretty much try to answer every single question after this. So the first question is by Lex Reef, and they ask, are there any concerns that the plants may be leaching some trace elements causing any deficiencies?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I will tell you, a lot of the plants that I am allowing to get into the water are air plants. So they are very limited as far as the genetics that they're leaching out. They're a very simple plant as far as its complexity. Hence why they don't really need a lot of medium. They don't need a lot of water, which kind of makes it perfect for these conditions. So because I don't have to over care, I have to have a pretty simple care. So I so far I haven't noticed any drastic changes. I'm dosing trace elements, and and yet I even use one of the things that Tusi did, is 1 drop a day of iodine, little things like that. And I really haven't. I've only seen pretty much I'm having the same success that I was having pre-plants. So that's kind of been my guide to tell me, I'm moving in the right way. Mm-hmm.
Right direction. Cool. So the next question comes from Ricky Bobby. Another great question. If you add plants to the tank, can they drain or leak anything to the waters?
Once again, I'm using air plants, and the orchids. I'm with staining the media through a pot. So there is a pot there, and the only thing I'm allowing is the roots to work their way out through the bottom, just to be able to have access to air and water and be able to manage that. And I even have a few air plants on top to be able to retain the media on top to prevent anything from leaching out in a natural way. But yeah, no, there's nothing being leached. Mm-mm.
Okay. Next question comes from Nathan L. James. They ask, you said there's clowns in the sump. Is there any specific reason why?
Um, yeah. So I mean, it's not gonna be an interesting answer to be honest with you. But if you look at the way my overflow is, so my overflow is pretty much a waterfall overflow where it just rims down, and sometimes they make their way down. And although I have a a drain, to prevent things from coming out. There's a small little chip of plastic that's just big enough to let the clowns make their way through the tube and make their way down to the sump. So when they decide to jump over into the overflow, there's been one or two that work their way down, and I have a lot of clownfish in here. So some of them just kind of work their way down, but not by design, no.
And then do you cycle them back to the top, I guess, once they get down
When
there?
I when I catch them, it doesn't happen often, but every once in a while, I want to make it through or two, and I'll go in there when I'm doing my cleanup, and I'll pull them out and throw them right back on top.
Awesome. I don't know. This is a question, but I don't know if it's a serious. Pris23 says, "Can you show me my Japanese willow?" LOL.
Oh, I mean, I don't know who that is, but I'll, I'll show you my Japanese willow.
Oh, so you do have a Japanese willow?
Yeah, I mean, it's being blasted with the waves right now, so
Ah, okay.
yeah.
Nice. And do you how does that? I've actually never seen a coral like that. Do you frag that up, and
Oh,
how
yeah,
does that propagate?
all the time. I usually,
Nice.
so this is the front end, so I usually just make babies out the back end. So I
Hmm.
mean, that's literally like fresh cut right there. You can't even tell, but I cut maybe 4 or 5 frags out of it like 2 days ago.
Nice. And
Yeah.
do those like a lot of flow? Like what type of parameters? Are those like a beginner type of coral? Like what kind of care do those need?
Hear
Oh,
me?
no, no worries. Yeah, I just said, in terms of that type of coral, is that like a beginner type of coral? Like what kind of care does it need? And does it actually need a lot of flow, or is it just kind of the way you have set up right now?
Yeah, it's just location. I just like the spot. It's one of my favorite pieces, so I wanted to put it like once you walk in. And the way I have the flow by design, it kind of all fell in place. It wasn't really, yeah. So, but I was curious to see how it would do in high flow,
Hmm.
really intense flow. And that was one that also adapted. When I first put it there, because in the old house it wasn't there. It was more in a shade, in a less flow area. So this was new to him in this place. So initially it took a beating. It didn't like it, and slowly but surely now it loves it. Now it's just all over the place. It can't get enough flow. So that's kind of proof to the changing things up a little bit, but giving it
Awesome.
time. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, no, it looks like it adapted really well. So the next question comes from Ricky Bobby. It might be a follow-up question from the last one, but they ask, can it drain anything? I guess, can the plant drain anything from the tank, like nutrients that will feed the plant from the tank water?
I think it's to be. I mean, and this is just speculation from me, but I think it's vice versa. I think slowly but surely, as like portions of the plants make their way into the water, I think it's extracting nutrients from my water into themselves and kind of feeding themselves through my water. I don't think it's vice versa. I don't think the plants are really taking it, giving anything, other than probably, like I said, some nitrates probably and phosphates just from natural slow deterioration of those that are, and they usually even underwater, I have kind of monitored the timeline to see how quick that deterioration happens. And it's interesting to see that it's not speeding up the process. It's not slowing it down, but it's not speeding it up either. It's keeping its natural course just like it would outside of the water. Mm-hmm.
Got it. All right. So Big Easy Reef says that I need a piece of that. I think they're talking about the Japanese willow that you just showed.
Yeah, I got you whenever you're ready. I got you
Awesome.
whenever you're ready.
Love it. Love it. So let's see. Someone says I have one of those willows. They say beauty. And guys, anyone else who's joining us right now, this is the time for questions. So we just ran through all the questions. Some question that came up earlier that I just remembered that we didn't answer yet was someone said, could you go through your dipping procedure? I mean, if you want to answer that first, and then I can answer that afterwards. But someone asked that earlier, so I just figured we'd jump back to that.
I mean, that's a great question. You know, I don't do it the same for everything. I mean, I dip everything, but I am kind of gauging the severity and my personal concern on piece to piece. I 99% of the time I'm sourcing from good people. So from the jump, I don't have to be too intense and too worried from the jump as far as, am I bringing along any pest or disease? But for safety reasons, while I'm acclimating the coral, I go through a pretty standard acclimation process. I do
We hope you're enjoying this episode. Thank you for listening to SBB Coral Reef Keeping Secrets Podcast. If you like the content, all we ask is for you to please share with your friends and comment, as that's the only way we can spread the word and grow this channel.
3/4 of 15 minutes for the most part. And on the third time, I'll drop about a quarter of a capful to about half, once again, depending on the intensity I feel it needs. And also the species too. There's some species and, the size of the stone and, so many little variables that I kind of take into account when I'm dipping. If I see it's a pretty big stone or a stone with a lot of room for opportunity for pests, I'll go a little bit deeper and a little bit more intense, maybe drag a little longer the timeline. So on average, I try to leave them anywhere between 20 to 30, 40 minutes, depending on how intense I need it to be and the species too. I feel a lot more comfortable pushing the time on like a zoanthid or a mushroom because I feel like they can just handle it better. Acroporas and stuff like that I feel are a little bit more sensitive. I'm a little bit more cautious with. It's, the volume and the time, and I'm a little bit more on top of it than I am with some of the softies.
Nice. Yeah. In terms of our dipping methods, I mean, we use potassium chloride. We do 2 tablespoons for 10 minutes. I think a lot of it too is not only dipping, but actually inspecting when stuff comes in. I think everybody should have at least like one of those little jeweler's lenses. They're really cheap. You can buy them off of Amazon. And I mean, listen, whatever you buy, like you're spending a lot of money on it. Just look at it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, look at the plug, look at the skin of the coral, especially if it's SPS, if you see any like dying portion of the skin, like even if it's just like a little piece, stare at that with a jeweler's lens for 10 minutes, see if there's anything moving around. Look for eggs. I think a lot of like this pest thing is like educating yourselves on what type of pests are, whatever your favorite type of coral is. Like if it's a mushroom coral, just Google, mushroom coral pests or zoos, and you'll basically see everything that you could get. And then once you get the coral, just study it with a jeweler's lens and then see if you find anything. And then obviously, dip it after that regardless. Like I said, we use the potassium chloride. I mean, one thing this is more for like SPS, but, we're really urging people, and, people don't like when I say this, but, we're urging people to try to set up a quarantine tank. Like, if you're spending thousands of dollars on SPS, like get yourself like a 30-gallon BioCube and just do a water change from your big system into the BioCube every week. Do like 80% of the BioCube water change, and you don't even have to keep the parameters in there. And then that way, you could be very, very, safe that way. So that's just what we recommend. So that's basically our dipping procedure. Ricky Bobby has another question. He's very intrigued, which I love. He says, did you ever try growing vegetable plants from the tank to try to see if it works?
I haven't got that far yet, but I'm curious now. You left me with a question mark now, but no, I haven't even considered it. I haven't thought about it. I kind of went with these choices just because I felt, for the sake of it being a new process, I didn't want to. I will definitely take this further, but once I have a little bit of results long term with this, that I feel I can move on to the next. It's kind of like zoanthids to the acropora. I'm gonna take the same route with the plants. And not to jump back from the dip thing, but I'll give a little bit of a personal trade secret, and this might not be very beneficial to some of the hobbyists, but I think to anybody that's either fragging, whether if you're fragging for yourself or you're fragging as a business, something that I felt was really, really useful to me was I use dip in the water from my saw. Okay. And due to the vibration and the cuts, and you're really digging into the stone, and the water's trickling in at the same time, it's a great opportunity for that dip to make itself into crevices while you're vibrating out these pests. And you can really make a strong impact. And you sometimes, to your point, you'd be surprised how deep and how deep some of these pests can be. Like you might look at the top coat and assume it's clean and clear and under control, but as soon as you start digging into that stone, you'd be surprised some of the things that might come out of dead in the center. So I've always added some dip into my saw water, and as I'm cutting, and I've seen that it really leaves me with very, very clean corals at the end. So just a little cool thing I thought works. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'll share a little tip, that we're experimenting with right now for all of our acro colonies. Anytime we cut them, we actually dip the whole colony in potassium chloride before we dip them. So like we literally dip the colony into potassium chloride and then take it out of the water. Like, we dip it in there for like maybe 2-3 minutes, shake it around vigorously, and then we basically cut it right out of there. And we found that the success rate of frags dying is a lot less when we dip it in potassium chloride first. Like before, we were cutting, like, I don't know, this might sound a lot, but there's 3 people cutting, like 600 frags in one day. And over like a week, maybe like 10% of them would die. That's like 60, that's 60 frags. And now that we've been dipping them in potassium chloride first, we have a lot less die off. So I don't know if it's just like a coincidence, but it's been working. And I think that the potassium chloride, is just killing like any bad bacteria that might show up. I mean, not to say that like bacteria is a pest, but in some senses, like it is. So, I mean, we've been trying that, and it's been working.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So if anyone who is into SPS, like we would definitely urge you to try that. And I mean, we've put this SPS in potassium chloride. We've done like 5 tablespoons for 25 minutes, and the coral looks absolutely fine. We actually dip the corals in potassium chloride as we're shipping them also. So like I know that like you could even dip it and then it could be in a bag for 24 hours and it shows up like amazing. So I think just killing off that bad bacteria is really important.
And I'm going to tell you why that's extra interesting for me. Was for a few years there was a local, I want to say it's a local myth, maybe it made its way up to you, but for a few years back in the days, there was a handful of people that were trying to get into the acro side of things, and they would tell me they're scared to dip them because they have lost them, or things have happened. And I've always been very hesitant to put things in my tank that aren't dipped. I don't care what it is. So I was never as scared to do it, even after I heard the myth, but I didn't want to share it for a period of time. I didn't want to give the advice of dipping acros because I wasn't sure if it was something happening, and I wasn't too deep into the acros to really give a solid and found and comfortable 100%. But I never personally had issues with it, so I kept practicing dipping, and I really never had any loss from dip. But is that something you've heard from people or something? Or I'm sure.
So this is Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing, right? So when I talk about dipping, I'm specifically talking about dipping with potassium
Hmm.
chloride, which, it's basically like just like a super high like salt concentration. So like if your reef tank is at like 1.026, this would be like a 1.05 salt or
Gotcha.
something, right? So that's basically what it is. But here's the thing, if you dip with something else, like if you're dipping with Bayer or Coral RX, like I personally think that those dips will burn the coral.
Hmm.
Like I get a lot of people that we ship SPS to, and like I mean, we have like a 14-day guarantee period, but like what happens is like they get the corals in and then they dip the coral with like Coral RX, but they dip it like too strong or Bayer too strong. And then like 3 days later, they say, oh, the coral died. And I'm like, okay, great. Here's a refund or here's a store credit. But when I look at the coral, it just looks like it was burned. So they dipped it, I think, too hard. So so specifically this dipping method I'm talking about is specifically with potassium chloride,
Okay.
and it's very effective on pests. I mean, like acro eating flatworms, I mean, it'll kill it within like 5 minutes.
Wow.
So it's really good, and it's very gentle on the coral as well.
Did you transition over to that? Did you start with that method, or what was your transition like? Did you have growing pains getting to this point? Like, I mean, some of the feedback here, just personal experiences, or is it? Well, I'm sure it is because it seems like you're very confident on, why you shouldn't take that route. So
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been like an ever evolving process. I mean, when we first
gotcha.
got into the hobby, like we were using Bayer and all that stuff. And then, one of my mentors said, oh, use potassium chloride. So we started using that. And then, we wanted to send like the cleanest frags out that we could. So we started dipping it before we even sent them out. And we said, wow, like the corals are showing up with full polyps. And then the other day we were like, let's just try to dip the corals before we cut them. Like, let's see what happens. And lo and behold, like our death rate on cut frags were a lot lower. So yeah, it's just kind of been like one of those things, like trial and error, and it's just kind of worked.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna jump. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. Somebody just asked you a question. It's a good one. I'm curious to hear your answer.
Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna run through these questions, and we'll get to that one as soon as I guess it comes up. But another one that Lex Reef asked you specifically, they said, did you cut that before the show, or did you say F it? I don't know if they're
Oh,
talking
he
about the
he was
Japanese will.
he was just messing around about the haircut. If I got a haircut before the show or not. No, I
Gotcha.
did.
Okay.
I didn't have time. I wish I did. And now that you said that, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, no worries. Someone says they burrow pretty deep. Okay. This person says, even if you're frag the coral, do you dip it after or? So in terms of that question, we dip it before we frag the coral. So like if you have an SPS colony and you're going to cut it, just dip it in potassium chloride, take it out of the dip, and then cut it as it's coming out of the
Hmm,
dip, basically. And then you can put it right back in your tank. Like we don't dip it afterwards, just before.
gotcha.
There's a couple other people just joining actually. Let's see. I currently burn my Gani with a dip. So somebody said I currently burn my Gani with a dip. If you want to mention what dip you were using, I can comment on that. But yes, you could definitely burn a Gani with a dip. Lex Reef, SBB Corals. If you're dipping before shipping, do you feel it necessary to dip when the customer receives? That's a great question, and I got to be honest with you. Absolutely. I absolutely think that you should dip when the customer receives. And to me, it's just forming a good habit because if you dip for some people and you don't dip for others, it's just a habit that you'll form of not dipping. And how do you know if how do you know if a vendor is dipping it or not? Like I could tell you right now, I don't think any vendors out there are dipping before they send their corals because when I buy from other vendors, I get very clean corals. But I also get pods that are coming off the corals. Sometimes get those little worms that are coming off the
That's
corals.
a great point.
And that's one of the reasons why we dip before we send them out is because we don't even want you to get pods in your water. Like we're not selling you pods. Like we're selling you clean coral. So the answer is yes. Always dip your coral. It doesn't matter who you get it from. I don't care if it's the most reputable vendor. Dip your corals every single time. No questions asked. And as a secondary, get a quarantine tank if you can. I mean, I know a lot of people are very limited on space. I get it. And if you can't do it, then you can't do it. But if you can't get a quarantine, you better be very, very careful and look at everything through a jeweler's lens.
100%. I
So
mean, I can't agree more. I can't agree more. And even on the quarantine process, it's not just for the sake of pest. I mean, which has been like the majority of this topic, but disease as well. Like the word quarantine comes from cuarenta, which was 40 days where ships were just stuck on the shore just to not bring in diseases. So. Yeah, like I think that's a great approach. If you have the ability to quarantine, like that's definitely a good approach. Absolutely. If you have the ability to, of course, but yeah.
yeah. Someone asked, Cafe Joe says, wonder what is the active ingredient in most dips. I'm not really sure. I know not to like keep bringing up Joe Tusi, but if he's still on this call and you have any clue what the most active ingredient on most dips is, be free to type it in the comments if you know. I know potassium chloride is just like a super high concentrated like salt level, so you're basically just dipping it in like just really high salt. It's almost like, when you get like a cut on your finger and they're like, oh, dip it in salt water to kill all the bacteria. It's almost like the same thing, I think.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's any
And
other.
I mean, if you don't got no more, check to see if we got any more questions. But I do have one question for you. So, I mean,
Cool.
feel
No,
free
go
to.
ahead and ask it right now. I mean, there is more questions and I have them queued up, but go
Okay.
ahead and ask yours right now
Yeah.
because I don't want you to forget it.
What's your process overall for antibacterials?
So that's a good one, right? And so there's two things that we use for that. One is ChemiClean and
Okay.
the other one is Cipro.
Okay.
So, for example, like with the SPS, if people always say that they have events, right? Like their SPS is looking great, and then all of a sudden it doesn't look that good, or some of it is peeling. So in our tanks, whenever we have peeling SPS, we automatically chemically clean the tanks right off the bat, and then usually that'll stop any bad bacteria, and then we'll see like polyps return. So, and the other thing is like when we receive an incoming shipment of like wild coral, those corals are going into a tank that has been chemi cleaned like 1 hour before the corals are coming in. So they go right into a chemi clean tank. And that has literally is like a night and day difference when it comes to, SPS colonies living or dying. So that's how we do it on the SPS. And then for other types of corals like mushrooms and zoes and torches, we dose Cipro directly to the tank. We dose it 500 milligrams per 100 gallons.
Very
And
interesting.
yeah, oh yeah. And Cipro basically has a 72-hour shelf life. So you can put the Cipro in for, 2, 3 days. And then what we do is we do like 3 doses in a row. Every 2, 3 days, we add another dose. And then after like 3 or 4 doses, then we do a water change. And that has like been like a lifesaver for torches and even some mushrooms that are basically like
You know,
just jelly.
you just broke the ice for me for something because I've always wanted to try that. I've never felt 100% comfortable or safe putting it in the tank, but I don't think I've heard somebody, kind of say that's say they do it with success, and
Confidently.
that's amazing. I've always used it for outside of the tank, so if I see a bacterial issue, I'll go ahead and pull out the piece and, like I'm dipping and go through the whole process. But if I can do it to the whole tank, that's definitely an approach I'm going to take going forward. And the reason why I ask, because I've been a huge fan of antibacterials. So fortunate enough for me, I live in South Florida and I'm very close to the Keys, and I've made a lot of friendships with a lot of licensed collectors and divers down there. And many, many, many moons ago, so approximately like maybe five years ago, before I really dove into a lot of the info, I went to connect with a diver, and most of these guys have their systems outdoors, and most of them live right off the coast or right through a canal that leads, and they just park their boat and unload their collection for the day. And they have these usually some type of tubs and stuff like that. And I noticed that one time when they were unloading from the boat, I would notice that they would line up the tubs before even making it to the systems. As they were unloading it off the boat to the dock, they literally were just dropping the medication right on there from the jump. They literally haven't even got that far, but they were just well aware that it's very, very high probabilities that out of a batch of 200 pieces, there's going to be some type of bacterial issues in one or two, and that's all you need to kind of get a plague across the whole collection. And I mean, they put a lot of work and time into collecting, and the last thing they want to do is at the end of the day just lose a whole batch. So I was so fascinated by that process, I took it upon myself to kind of just continue that. And but it seems like it became the norm as years progress, especially as the euphilia fever got higher and more people experienced, like, the brown jelly and bailouts, and all these things started coming about. It seems like this whole antibacterial craze really sunk in, and I'm excited about it because it's, to your point, it's extremely useful, necessary. Yeah.
It's night and day. Like, I mean, if we're importing acros, if we don't do chemi-clean in the system, like 50% of them will die over 2 weeks. If we do chemi-clean, nothing dies. Like, even the ones that come in half dead, we put it in the tank and it literally just survives. Like, and it's because I know it's because of the chemi-clean, because once we started doing that, like, we pretty much, like, everyone used to complain, oh, we import acros, we're losing 50% over 2 weeks. Chemi-clean your system and you won't lose them anymore.
No.
So let's see what the next question is. How much potassium chloride per water ratio? So it's 2 tablespoons per gallon for 10 minutes. So 2 tablespoons per gallon for 10 minutes. And the next one comes from Ricky Bobby. Can someone request you dip the coral before you ship and then they just transfer to tank? Will that minimize the death rate? Ricky, this goes back to my other, thing. Always dip your corals. It doesn't matter who they come from. It doesn't matter if it's the most respected vendor on the planet. It doesn't matter if they dip it before they send it to you. Ricky, please dip your corals when you get them as a good precaution, and spend time looking at them with a jeweler's lens, because you think when you get it, there's nothing on there. And then when you look at it through a jeweler lens, this little speck is moving around, and then all of a sudden you realize that, oh, that has whatever it is. So definitely dip, look. That's what I would recommend.
And it's an easy solution before you put it in the tank. Not so easy once it's in the tank and it's taken off. Good luck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ralph, this is for real. So, Ralph, thanks for answering that. 2 tablespoons per gallon. And let's see, my quarantine tank turned into another display. So yeah, one person says that their quarantine tank turned into another display, which, yeah, I mean, if you run out of space in your main display, then your quarantine tank. But yeah, I would still suggest, like, especially for you, you should not, Nathan James, you should get a third tank, for a quarantine. Let's see if there's any other questions.
Yeah. While you're looking for
sure.
Let me give a shout out to Lex's Reef, my fish guy down here in South Florida. He's been showing support and love throughout the live and cracking some jokes and giving me a hard time. But I appreciate him for all the love and support, and he's a good dude, so y'all check him out.
Definitely, man. Yeah, check out Lex Reef. You could basically click on his name, and that'll take you, I think, right to his profile. So if anyone wants to check out Lex Reef, thanks for coming in and having some fun with us tonight, man.
I appreciate it.
Of course. Next person. So someone says, yeah, Rob says Cipro in tank after new arrival is magic. I mean, it really is, guys. Like, if you're not doing this and your corals are dying, like, you literally need to start doing this. It's 100% safe. Like, it's not even like, oh, maybe my tank is different. No, like, this is 100% safe. Like, don't even think twice. People say, oh, well, do you have to dose bacteria after you dose that? I mean, to be honest, I don't know. Maybe you do, right? I mean, we don't, and everything seems fine. So I'm not really sure if you have to afterwards, but for us, it doesn't seem like we need to.
I think once in a mature tank, I mean, I think that's like kind of the definition of a mature tank. You know, the bio load has reached a point where it repopulates itself in such a pace that, you know, even if you put a dent to it, it'll come right back. I think bacterial supplement. I mean, I do it. I don't. It's not something I do religiously. You know, where I'm like, have to do it. It's something, you know, when I remember, if I feel like I've caused any type of impact to the bio load for a little peace of mind, I just throw a little bit in there. But I think it's more of a necessity for like these newer tanks, or you know, a less experienced tank that might not be developing a bio load as fast, or might not reach that peak where the bio load's already on autopilot. But that's just, once again, my personal opinion.
So the next question comes in from Silver Beach Fish. Thank you for the question. Any thoughts on battling cyano with biodigest or any other good bacteria? Louis, I'll let you answer that one first.
Ooh. I mean, cyanobacteria. I mean, I think it's a combination of, you know, that's why it's such a common thing in new tank syndrome. You know, it's usually a disorientation of nutrients in combination with a lack of of a natural bacteria replenishment. So, part of it's kind of going through the, if it's the cyano on in a newer tank, it's kind of going through the motions and finding your adjustments both on a nutrient scale and a bacterial scale, which though the nutrient one's a little bit easier to address than the bacterial side. That one takes a little bit more of just understanding how bacteria works in your tank, and you know, to your point, bad bacteria, good bacteria defeat bad with good. You know, sometimes you got to throw a little monkey wrench, which is the chemicals, the cipros, to kind of, but ultimately it's a combination of all these things coming together, because although they're separate processes, and they do make intersections along the way.
Yeah, I mean, my answer is I'm not really sure what biodigest is. I know like when we have cyanobacteria, we immediately dose ChemiClean, and it pretty much just takes care of it. I mean, to be honest, I mean, we're pretty much dosing ChemiClean in our tank like every 3 months, like legit. Like I'm talking about like a packed tank with hundreds of corals. Like every 3 months, we're dosing ChemiClean. So we haven't had cyano for a while, and again, like that, I know that's definitely 100% safe. Someone says mushrooms definitely need antibacterial on new import for sure. I completely agree there. Someone says, how do you know if you have bacterial issues with SPS? Louis, do you want to comment on that before I do, or?
How do you have what's the question again? I'm sorry.
It's from P. Corpion. Sorry if I butchered that name, but it says, how do you know if you have bacterial issues with SPS?
Well, look, when I was doing my live streams, I brought on Hydrospace Microbacterial, which they are currently have their product on BRS, their website, along with a lot of other places. And that was a question that I picked with them. And you know, what they told me was, you know, STN and RTN, which are pretty much the two most common things that, you know, a lot of the hobbyists run into. Those A lot of those diseases are kind of are chasing the acropora via some sort of scent. They can kind of smell the acropora in the water as they're swimming through trying to find a host. So it seems like certain bacteria, you know, which just natural bioloads can, you know, the better the bioload, I think the harder the challenge for the STN and RTN to find its host. And, you know, if you have any type of UV sterilizer or something, you can kind of slowly dissipate those diseases from getting to the acropora. But I think it kind of correlates with also how SPS just tends to thrive in more mature tanks. And I think the mature one, like I said before, maturity is just equal to strong bioloads, you know? So, I mean, that's my take on it based on some of the feedback from those guys and my personal take on it.
So I guess for me to answer it, you know, I would just say, you know, if your SPS is just, you know, if all your other parameters are perfect, like you're using clean water, like you're making your own RODI water, you're changing out your membrane, you're changing out all your filters, you know your parameters are perfect, you know your water's perfect. If your polyps like have really low polyp extension, or if the skin is like really thin, and everything else is perfect, then you might have a bacterial issue. And
That's a good
or
point.
if you have like a little, RTN from the bottom, or if the coral's like bleaching, I would definitely recommend ChemiClean. I mean, I would just recommend ChemiClean just because, like, if you think you have an issue and you've checked everything else, like, why not just do ChemiClean? Like, it doesn't hurt at all, and I think it could help.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the symptoms. Someone says dip and inspect 1,000% of the time. I agree with you. And someone asked a question, Juice 185. They say, do you dip your corals as soon as they come in, or do you put them in the tank to let them de-stress and dip a couple days later? Go ahead, Lewis.
No. You never want to put. I do not put any corals, no matter how good and even how you can. I mean, my tank's extremely clean. You can run into extremely clean and beautiful tanks, and aesthetically they might look extremely good and give you that confidence. Doesn't matter. Dip dip it before it touches your tank. Like I said, it's an easy fix if you can catch it beforehand. It's not that easy once you get it in your tank, because if it spreads, you're not just dipping a piece anymore. Now you got to go down the rabbit hole of treating other things, and then you have that that can't sleep well at night thinking, did it make it out? Is it over there? Am I gonna have to treat everything? So save yourself the headache. Take a few extra minutes and dip it.
Yep. And then my answer to that question is, you know, why wouldn't you dip the coral, right? Like, so we have a quarantine system, and even when we get new coral in, we dip it before it goes into the quarantine, because if that coral has like bad bacteria or whatever, and we put it in the quarantine, it could affect the others. I think it really comes down to your confidence level with the type of dip that you're using. Like, if you're using potassium chloride, like, I'm so confident that that doesn't hurt the coral that it's like, why not dip it before it, like, to me that's just going to kill all bacteria. It's going to kill like 98% of pests. So it's like, why not dip it? But if you're using Bayer, and if you're using some of these other dips, like, if the coral gets banged up in shipping and then you use Bayer, I don't really think that that's necessarily a good thing to then dip it when you get it, because it could stress it out. But if you're using potassium chloride, I have no problem with that. So I think it goes back to, what is your confidence, Juice 185? What's your confidence with the dip that you're using? So I'd basically just leave it at that for right now.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. I agree.
Um, Lady Aquatica, thank you for joining us tonight. She asked, do you say you ship with potassium chloride? So I don't ship with potassium chloride. What we do is we dip the coral in potassium chloride before we put it in the shipping bag. So we basically have like a little, like 1 or 2 gallon bucket with the potassium chloride in it. And then in the bucket, we have like a turkey baster. So what we do is we put the coral in that bucket with the dip. We turkey baster it all around. We shake the coral off. We take the coral out of the water, and then we put it directly into the bag of water that we're shipping with. So that's
Yeah,
basically how we do it.
yeah, and look, just I guess a little disclaimer, and you could either agree or disagree. I'm not sure what your take will be on this, but something I saw in the comments right now was, darn it, I'm using Bayer. I love, and I really trust the processes you've taken, because it seems like you put the legwork and took the time and have the results to kind of prove that this is a safe and treated process. But in the case that you don't have the tools that he has, if you do have any type of dip that you feel it's got to be, try not to use expired or overheated or anything. But if it's a decent brand and you can kind of go through the instructions, maybe go through a few YouTubes, and maybe somebody has good info on the dip your preview to are available, use it. And it's any type of dip is better than no dip. So if you can take the routes that he's taken, then go for it, and kudos to you. But if you don't, whether you don't have it in front of you or you can't get to it and you have corals in your hands, you got some dip, put it to use. Put it to use.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with that. I mean, I don't want to say like Bayer's terrible, right? Like, I think that some people will over dip their corals sometimes with Bayer or Coral RX. I think that sometimes they'll just do it too strong, but obviously Bayer works. Obviously Coral RX works because they're very prominent in the market. And if it didn't work, like if that dip literally killed your coral, nobody would use Bayer, nobody would use Coral RX. So yeah, absolutely, you can use that. I just don't over dip it, right? Like don't double the dip, don't do it for double the time. Like just make sure you know how to use that dip. Follow the instructions. I mean, Bayer doesn't have instructions, so you have to make sure that you're like researching online like how to use it. But guys, like even potassium chloride, it's like so cheap. It's cheaper than any other dip out there. You can go to Amazon and I think for $20 you can get 20 pounds. Literally, you could get 20, or maybe it's $30. You get 20 pounds of potassium chloride. And if anybody has any questions on where to get it, you guys can send me a DM. I'll literally just send you the link.
And I guess another quick disclaimer that kind of came to my head, and some of the comments coincidentally are just popping in that this might answer some of those questions, but the amount of dip that you're using is also in direct correlation with the volume you're using of water. You know, if you sometimes you might be using the proper amount, but you're using it in a small little cup, that's a recipe for disaster. And vice versa, if you're using a huge container, you're dipping a little bit, it might not be as effective. So you have to find where that balance is volume to ratio and what you're dipping.
That's a huge one. I think some people just don't realize how small their container is and they over dip. And I think that's definitely something that can, burn your corals in a sense if it's over dipped that way. Someone asked, where do you get Cipro from? So it's very easy to get Cipro. It's not like it's any type of pharmaceutical, prescription grade. If you Google Cipro fish, you'll basically find that they sell it all over the internet. Just Google Cipro fish antibacterial, and you'll see that it comes in little jars. It's 500 milligrams a tablet. It's not that expensive, and it's really easy to get.
One of my customers says you can find it at chewy.com, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So FYI.
Yeah, there's a bunch of websites. You'll Google it right now while you're on this call. You'll see that there's a bunch of spots online for it. Yep. Let's just see what the next question is, and we are going to start running out of time. We're typically at 90 minutes, so I know it's been a great call because we're already over that, and I feel like we're just starting. So next question is, and I mean we'll probably end the questions in 10 minutes, but next question is SBB and Reef X corals. What is your pH and where do you like it at? So I'll let you, Louis, start with that one.
Because of my ideology and my variations, my pH is constantly varying, but it's always within reason. So on a worst case scenario, I'm usually looking at an 8.0. And set me, if I really push it too far and I haven't had enough time, then sometimes it might trickle slightly into a 7.9, which at that point I'm already pumping the brakes and getting back on track, and then you'll see a quick jump up to usually around 8.2. I don't do a lot of extra things that allow me to get to that magic 8.4 number, which, not saying I wouldn't want it, but I'm also not chasing it. I think I'm having pretty good success where I'm at, but because of my variable methods, I do stay within that range where I'm happy with.
And what's your method to get it there or control it there? How do you, the secondary question to that is, how do you control it that way?
Just trying to get cross as many T's and dot as many I's. Even though the variables are there, they're still all within reason. So I'm just checking off as many points as I can to not give anything a chance to cause an extreme dip in my pH that can then cause issues. I mean, and even things that we might seem out of our control, like these plants, although they're beautiful and I do it for aesthetic reasons, they also help with air quality. My house is covered in philodendrons and sansevierias, and food for thought for anybody. If you Google sansevieria, NASA did research that it can clean up to 90% of the air pollution in your home per 200, 300 square feet, if I'm not mistaken. So, if most of these tanks are in living rooms or bedrooms or garages. So if you can throw one or two of those plants, It's not gonna change your tank overnight, but throughout time you have better air quality, which that will kind of move the needle a little bit. So combination of all these things kind of help keep my pH on check. Mm-hmm.
Nice, nice. Yeah, it's interesting that you do it through the plants, but that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of our pH, I mean, we keep our tanks at pH between like 8 and I'll be honest, it goes from like 8.2 to
Wow.
8.6, and we don't do anything for our pH, so I don't even know why it does that. Like some people think that like there's no way your pH is that high, and I'm like, well, we just calibrate. I mean, we really haven't calibrated it forever, but the thing is, like I mentioned, Ralph who's on this call, he has a tank that's literally across the street from mine, and his pH is exactly the same. So I don't know why our pH is high. I can tell you though that our houses are really old. Like my house was built in the 1800s, and I think it has like basically like no insulation in where the tanks are. So I feel like that's why the pH might be higher. The other thing is that we use ESV for our two-part, for our alcalc and mag, and I've heard that that will bring up your pH, which I think it does because that's what we use, and our pH stays at like 8.4.
100%. I think that's a conversation and a factor that's usually kind of ignored and not really discussed. But the salt that you're using and the mixtures you're making, although on paper they're listing the parameters and your alk and your calcium and all the other stuff, but there is a pH involvement with your salt mixes, and good salt will drive your pH in a better position. It won't guarantee you the 8.4 to 8.6, which for some people it might, but it definitely will push the needle for the pH, and some more than others. I mean, a good salt will absolutely make an impact on your pH, and I think that's something that's not talked about enough.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I think my pH gets too high, but I mean, there's nothing I can
Crazy,
do.
8.6. I'm sure you definitely got a few people scratching their heads right now.
It's crazy. Like I'll send you my like if anyone wants to see, I'll send you my Triton. You can see it's just like crazy. But all right, so let's see what else we got. See if we can
Life is
squeeze.
simple. What's ESV? ESV is a brand.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So ESV, if you just again like Google or go to BRS, just type in ESV alk, ESV calc, ESV two-part, and you'll basically see it. It's like a two-part additive. It's how you dose up your alkalinity and your calcium. It's basically like it's if you could do that, or you can use a calcium reactor. So there's like two methods to get to control like your alk, calc, and mag, and the two part is basically like you're dosing alk and calc directly by like liquid form instead of like melting coral down by a calcium reactor. So it's just a different method.
Yeah.
Someone says, do you dose Cipro as a preventative? Absolutely, we dose it as a preventative. Anything new coming in, like when we get a big shipment coming in, we dose Cipro like right off the bat.
I will tell you, I don't do it on everything. I do it on a lot of things, but are you also doing it on like zoanthids and stuff like that?
So like I told you before, our zoanthids pretty much are non-existent.
That's right. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah,
yeah.
right. But like in the case that you were,
we will.
You will. Okay, so it's
definitely
not. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, no, it's every single coral basically.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep. Someone says, I'm just going to try to speed the questions up because we're going to totally run out of time soon.
Absolutely.
But do you do a water change after chemi-clean? So this is a big one. I'll comment on that real quick. So in terms of the water change after chemi-clean, we keep the chemi-clean in there for 48 hours, and then we do a water change. We do like a 15% water change. But the secret tip for that is most people complain that after chemi-clean, they can't get their skimmer to work properly because it just foams bubbles everywhere. So the trick to that is, let's just say, and you can do the math on this, but if you have like a 300-gallon system and you dose chemi-clean, you're going to have to skim out 10 gallons of bubbles before the skimmer will work properly. So just set your skimmer at like 30% and leave that little hose open and just skim out 10 gallons of bubbles, and then you'll be able to skim properly again. So just know that.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Let's just see. Is it recommended to do water changes after chemi-clean? Yes. How often do you do water changes? So we'll answer this one, and then after this one, let's say we'll answer three more. Ricky Bobby asks us, how often do you do water changes in the coral grow tanks. Lewis, if you want to go first on that one.
Yeah, I'm a huge water change guy. I for the first, like I said, this tank's going on like 6.5 years. For the first like 5.5 years, I was pretty much like weekly water changes. Um, I shied away towards the tail end, not by choice. Just personal. Time wasn't met, and I started having to skip some. And because of that, I just started testing to see what happens, because I was so spot on for so long that at that point I was just curious to see what would happen if I skip a week or two. Which is kind of why the Tusi conversation was so interesting, because I got to get his story, and it kind of I could relate. But I'm a huge fan of weekly water changes. For me, what I tell people is less is more. So I don't necessarily think you have to, empty out the tank and fill it up again every time. I usually, my rule of thumb was 10%, unless I felt there was a need to have to go up, which for me, really maybe once or twice that I've had to like maybe do a little bit more, just because I felt something was a little bit more off than I wanted it to be. But for the most part, 10% a week kept me on check, and that allowed me to play that variable game. And while, you can, if you're doing a 10% water change and still playing a game, the water change kind of serves as a minor reset to kind of always keep you in a safe space. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for us, I mean, we do 15% water changes every single week.
Oh,
Sometimes we do a lot. Yeah, every single week we do
I'm with
15%. Sometimes we actually do a lot more because, we have like our one system that we have is 500 and I think, no, sorry. The system now is about 700 gallons. We just added like two tanks to it. And that system, we basically ship out. It's where all of our sales frags are. So like on any given ship day, like we might be using, 60 gallons worth of water for shipping.
you.
Do that 2 days in a row. That's 120 gallons plus a water change on Friday. I mean, that's like 25% water change. But yeah, we're constantly doing water changes like all day.
Yeah.
Um,
And for people that sell, that sell corals, that's a huge consideration, that, you are kind of doing daily water changes as you're extracting orders and stuff like that, and replacing that water. Those are technically water changes.
Somebody says, crap, my phone is dying. Yeah, no, there's so many questions. So listen, I'm gonna let two more questions go, but Lewis, I'm gonna let you pick the last two questions because I don't even know which ones to pick, and we're running out of time. So I'll let you kind of pick the last two questions that you want to take, and then I'll help you answer them as well.
Let me see if I haven't really been following, so let me go up a little bit and see what.
Yeah, there he is. Hey, we
I'll,
lost you there.
I'll let you kind of get the questions
I'll
before
take
I
them.
fat
Oh,
finger
okay.
this and again disconnect myself again.
No worry. I felt bad. I didn't know if I kicked you by accident or
No,
something. I was like, oh shit.
I fat fingered myself out.
My bad. My bad. Let me. It felt really lonely in here for about like 35 seconds. I was like, oh shit. Let me. All right. I'll answer two more, guys, and then I'm gonna ask the question for the gift card. Okay. Here's one question that Silver Beach Fish. Any thoughts on pre-mixing a gallon of potassium chloride? Does it have a shelf life? I mean, I don't know. I have never done that before. It definitely. You know what? I'm going to tell you that I wouldn't do that, and I'll tell you why. Is because when we have our days when we dip our coral, like sometimes we just dip every coral in the farm, like I don't know, because we feel like it helps with the bacteria, whatever. So when we do that, we notice that, let's say and we have all of our corals like on like egg crate, right? So we could literally dip like 100, like let's say 30 corals at a time. So when we put the first set of corals in there for 10 minutes, we take it out, we put the second set of corals, the third set of corals. You get the point, right? So we're
Yeah,
dipping 10 minutes, 20 minutes. The dip weakens as we're going on
makes sense.
with, and the reason why I know is because when we first put the acros in there, they slime up a little bit. And then if we're 30 minutes into the dip and we put acros in there after 30 minutes, they slime up less. So I know that the dip weakens as it goes. So I would not recommend pre-mixing a gallon of potassium chloride. I don't know if it has a shelf life or not, but I wouldn't recommend doing that just based on, our
Makes sense.
observation. Yeah. And let's see here. One more question. Yeah, Ralph confirms that his pH is at 8.6. Let's see here. Okay, here's one more question. Okay, this is the last question, and it's by Lex Reef. So I'm happy that the last question is by him,
That's
and
awesome.
he asked directly to you, Lewis. Do the plants help maintain the pH levels on your tank?
The ones on top, I don't think they have the volume and capacity to really move the needle for me. But I mean, I'll show you pretty much what I'm using. I think it'll be interesting to show you guys what I'm. So certain plants, philodendron, I kind of keep them laying around. Have a few of these. These are the best. These are huge air purifiers, and you keep a few of these around the house. Like this one for sure, I know is pushing the needle. The ones on top of the tank, so sorry. Keep
You got to keep your hands away from the phone. I'm kidding.
yeah, I'm
Kidding.
trying. I'm trying. They're calling me Fat Finger Fred. Good job, Lex. Yeah. So you got the last question now for
Yeah, I don't
the
think
for the gift card,
I mean,
right?
I think you showed us some plants, and then I think we didn't see them all. Maybe I'm not sure.
Yeah, I cut off. Well, other than I have a bunch of plants like floating on top of the tank. Certain different varieties. If you look at that cable right behind me, you can see. I'm trying to point at it. It's trailing
Mhm.
all the way up the cable. There's plants kind of trailing up there. I got plants in on the kitchen. I got plants everywhere. So a little bit of everything. You don't necessarily have to go that crazy, but I think with like two of the big ones that I showed back there, like those alone will change the game
Awesome.
for sure.
So, all right, guys, this is going to pretty much wrap up the call. I mean, we're almost running 2 hours, which is incredible. I know that there's been 30 people here with us at all times, and I just we're going to do the raffle in a second. But I just want to say, like, wherever you're listening to this, some of you guys eventually might be listening to this in your car. We're going to put this on a podcast. The only thing that we ask, guys, is that you share this. You can share this with other hobbyists that you know. You can say, hey guys, we saw this awesome video, whether it's on YouTube or even on this Instagram live. When I'm done, I'm gonna add Lewis as a collaborator, and we're gonna both put it on our walls, so that way you could always go back and you can reference it. So all we do is we just ask that you share this. If you guys liked it, just share it, and that's the only way that we're gonna basically grow this channel. So with that said, guys, here's the big question. This is the question for a $150 gift card, SBB gift card. So the first person who answers this question is going to win this gift card, okay? I'm going to ask the question, so get your fingers ready. And if you have fat fingers, you might miss the answer on this one. I'm kidding.
I'm not
So the
answering.
question is, and I think this is, the question is, I was talking to Lewis earlier, and he mentioned something. What is Lewis's favorite type of coral? What is Lewis's favorite type of coral? Whoever answers this first is going to win the gift card, guys. Have to answer it correctly. I don't know if there's a lag because no one's answered yet. But what is Lewis's? It is Zoe. The answer is Zoe. So the person who answered, and I think it was a lag, but the person who I see answered first was Big Easy Reef. Do you see that too? So Big
Yep.
Easy Reef,
Yep.
what you're going to want to do
Mm-hmm.
is you're going to want to message me, and I'm gonna give you the gift card. I might not give it to you till tomorrow. I will definitely answer you, so you are the winner of the $150 gift card. Now, before we end this, I just want to ask you, Lewis, one question that I ask people at the very end. And the question that I have for you is, I see you're very intensely passionate about the hobby. Obviously, when you were showing us your tank, there were so many nuances that you were sharing with us, with the plants and basically your whole design. My question to you is, like, is it all worth it, right? Like, I'm sure this is just stuff that goes in your mind all day, like every day. Like, is it all worth it to you? Like, is all this passion, hobby, like this addiction that we have, like, is it worth it?
1,000,000%. I wouldn't change 1 second of it for the world. I mean, it's taught me a lot, not only in the reef world, but outside the reef world on my day-to-day basis. It's taught me to be more patient. It's taught me to be more understanding. It's built me a lot of friendships, and it's left me a piece of the ocean and that I can share with my kids, my wife, and a lot of the passion experience will naturally trickle down into my kids. That's the goal. So I wouldn't
Love it,
change
man.
a
Dude,
second
it's been
of
an
it.
absolute pleasure tonight. I know it was an amazing call because we went an hour overtime. So, dude, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to building a relationship with you in the future.
Likewise, man. Thank you for everything and for everything you do for
Thanks,
the hobby,
brother.
man. Have a good night,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.
Thanks for
Talk to
the
you guys. See you
support.
soon.
Bye.
Bye.
We hope you're enjoying this episode. Thank you for listening to SBB Coral Reef Keeping Secrets Podcast. If you like the content, all we ask is for you to please share with your friends and comment, as that's the only way we can spread the word and grow this channel.